everybody. I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV. So I got Matt Clark on. He's got a YouTube channel. It's called Canada Prison Stories with the new Matt Clark. Go check that out and subscribe. And so the last time he was on, we ended it with what was the craziest thing that you think you saw when you were in prison in Canada. If you guys want to watch the first interview, I'm going to link the link to that in the description of this video. If you guys want to go ahead and check that out before you check out part two. But so Matt, man, what was the craziest thing you think you saw when you were locked up in Canada?
Well, first off, shout out to you, shout out to your channel and your subscribers. I just want to say thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
You know, I look forward to coming and doing the interviews because I appreciate the channel. I appreciate the message, and I enjoy talking to you. So the craziest story that I have is not really a prison. It's more of a jail story.
All right.
In Ontario, you have the Toronto region, which is the most densely populated area in Canada. So in Toronto, you have about 3 million people. In the greater Toronto area, you got about 7 million people. So you have 3 jails, and one of those jails, detention centers, called the Don Jail. So I had just been arrested on a parole violation with this piece of co-accused that I had. Okay, so we get pulled over. This guy tells me everything's legit. He's all legit across the board. Turns out he's not. He doesn't pull a solid. We end up in the Don. The Don Jail is like an old school detention center. The guards are rough. It's all bars, really thin range, long 18 cells, 3 mans a cell. And every drug dealer that gets arrested in Toronto at that time, who's on federal drug charges, so then you go to Old City Hall Court, you deal with the Old City Hall prosecutors, you go to the Don. So basically every gang member in the city is in the Don.
Okay.
When they walk you on the range, there's a front side and a back side. So I went to this range called 2A Backside. It's infamously known as like a Gaza range, a dangerous block. There's no cameras. There's no guards watching. There's 54 guys. Like I said, there's a front side and a back side with cages all around the 2 range and a wall in between. And every hour, the guard does a walk around the thing. But if you're on the back side, there's nobody posted up there all the time. And the Don's such an old school jail that the guards do nothing. When you come in, they don't put you in your cell. They don't make sure you get your food, none of that. They just push you on the range. The inmates put you in your cell. If you're a punk, you could literally be sleeping in a different cell every night. They could be, bro, go down to cell 18. They move you all over the place.
Why do they move the punks? Because they're fucking, or because they don't want to be in the same cell with them?
Yeah, none of that. Because there's none of that in Ontario. You'll get killed for that shit. Somebody catches you doing something like that in the cell, you're getting hurt bad. Somebody even catches you piping off in the cell, you're probably going to get hurt bad.
So so in Canada, there's no booty bandits like there is in the States?
No. Not in population.
Damn, I should have went to prison in Canada, bro. Shit's crazy down here. It's definitely not like that down here. It's insane, man. You wouldn't even believe it, especially you never seeing it where you've been locked up, and then for you to have to come down here, you would be in a whole nother world.
You'll get killed if it's consensual.
Oh man, they're not on none of that shit, huh?
No. So it's anti-LGBTQ in the city in Toronto. Okay, if you're in prison, it's pretty much anti. Now there are some dudes that are there because they're just hardcore gangsters that happen to be. Right. That's a different situation. There's no booty bandit stuff going on at all. In general population, I can't speak for what goes on in protective custody. Who knows what those guys are doing in there? But I was in the Don Jail, and this dude came on the block who had been on the block before. He's this like little short dude, black guy, but stock, jack dude. And I guess when he was on the block before, he had the block up in a way. He had his homies with him, and they kind of had the block on smash. When he came back to the block after going to SEG, he was just on one. He felt like he should be able to come back to the block, have the same pull that he had on the block, was batting up everybody, calling everybody punks, trying to just diss up everybody. He even flexed on me at one point when I was locked up in my cell just for standing doing workout. He's like, yo, he's just talking crap. And it's like, buddy, I don't have a problem with you move off from my cell. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? He's clearly got issues,
Yeah.
anger management problems, and they just weren't having it. They were tired of him, and he was there alone. All of his homies were gone, but he was still acting the same way. And I guess they had some resentments. So I'm So I'm standing there one day, and everything's cool. Everybody's smoking. Seems like it's super chill. The guys at the table playing cards. All of a sudden, a man just walks up behind them, sleeps him, puts him in a sleeper hold, drags him into a cell, and for about 15 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, you hear the man just screaming for his life. Like screaming for his life. But you can hear the whack, whack, like the hard hits. And it's not screaming like he's fighting. It's screaming like he's screaming for help. Like, and he's a bully, so nobody felt bad for the dude, right? Like, bro, the music just went up on the TVs. Everybody just and this is the crazy thing about it. In the middle of him being killed, they come for a professional visit. His lawyer called him for a professional visit. And when they come to the range, they're like, so-and-so, professional visit. And they're like, he's in the shower. He needs some time. He's in the shower. They come back like a half an hour later. Before they had come back, though, they had pulled this guy now out of the cell. One guy was holding his arms. One guy's holding his legs. And they just shovel threw him into the shower. You hear his head whack off the concrete. They rinsed the body off of all the blood and stuff. They threw him on a mattress, dragged him up to the front of the range with a blanket up to him, like up to here, and just left him there as he's like this. Just laid out at the front of the block. And it was crazy because the dudes are like, the one dude's going around telling her, you didn't see nothing. And me being a pen timer, had to tell this dude, like, bro, why are you even walking around telling everybody? And
what is a pen timer? What is that considered?
A pen timer is anybody who's been to the federal penitentiary.
Oh, okay.
In Canada, if you're a pen timer in the detention center system, like in the correctional system, which is anything less than 2 years, you're going to be given a different level of respect than somebody who's never been.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if you're a white boy and you're in an all-black range, they're going to give you more respect than you would be just a white boy walking off the street, because they know you've been through it on some level. If you were in population in the federal system, you're not a punk, most likely, right? So you get that respect. But man, I'm telling you, hearing somebody blood-curdling scream for their lives. Now, I've been in the pen, so I had seen people get stabbed. I had seen attempted murders already. I saw one guy just get a shank twice in his carotid artery, where he's like 15 feet out of his neck in the middle of the courtyard. And a parole officer ran up to him and actually grabbed him by the neck, applied pressure on his neck, and ran him to healthcare and saved his life. Even though she's just getting blasted with his blood. But she saved his life, and now his face is all hanging. But anyways, because of that situation, they busted up the range half and half, shipped half of us to the East Detention, half stayed in the Dawn. We were kept separate from everybody for months because nobody had been charged. They didn't want to have a bunch of killers in the population, so they kept us on a court cells range in the East Detention, and eventually integrated us back in with the population. And the funny thing about it is, I was already cold to violence. Like, it didn't affect me in the moment. It was one of those things like, you're a little thrown back by it, right? Because at the end of the day, you are seeing somebody be killed, even though I didn't directly see the guy get killed. You're seeing his dead body there on the range. You're seeing the ambulance and the feds come in and, you know, pump his heart, and they're sticking tubes down his throat. It's a lot to deal with. And it was literally right in front of my cell. I feel like I have gone through so much violence in my life already that I was able to kind of just shelf it and just add it to the trauma. And ultimately that just leads to more using, to more burying your emotions and your feelings, to being just colder and colder and colder. And like I said, my last bit, I was pretty much violent. I had never been in real, like, a lot of beefs. I was more like the Joker guy that wanted to just kind of do my time, smoke some weed and just chill, listen to music, and just accept the fact that I'm in prison because I put myself there. So I never was one of those dudes that was in a bad mood all the time, bitching because I'm locked up. Like I put myself there. But my last bit, man, I felt super uncomfortable inside. Like I felt like I was not the same guy. I didn't relate to people the same. People upset me a lot more. And as a result of that, I got in a lot more fights and was more prepared to go through a lot more violence than I would have been in the past. And I think it's just seeing all these different situations. Like I remember one time, bro, I literally just got to the penitentiary. I was there like a few months and I was coming out of the life room and this dude was like leaning up against the sports room or like the gymnasium door. There's a door that goes into the gym. So he's watching people play ball and stuff. And this group of guys walking up the hall this way, right when I come out of the door, this dude pulls out a big ice pick and just starts stabbing buddy in the head. And I'm literally like matrixing the blood. And I was in a low medium security penitentiary before that because I was a property crimes dude. So they started me in like a lower security jail, Fembrook. You know, you cook your own food. You don't see a ton of violence like that. And I had been kicked out because I got caught with some drugs, landed on a range with my brother, who was a lifer, which was, you know, great to be able to spend those 2 years with my brother. But so much violence at that time. From 2006 to 2008 in Joyceville, there was an active metal plant running. So there's literally shears with 10 gauge steel, you know, all these different levels of steel. Guys are just literally fastening machetes and then throwing them over the back fence or putting them on a cart and they get taken through on like a maintenance cart. So guys are armed with machetes in this place. When people are getting stabbed, it's not slices. It's people are getting deep wounds into their arteries and into their organs, and you're smelling that. It was a different time for me, man. And it was an eye-opening experience. And that was after that, and then that experience in the dawn was when I really decided about changing my life, was when I was like, okay, I need to change. I don't want to be involved in all this stuff because eventually, like, you know, you get in fights. Sometimes that stuff gets carried away. You know, you could end up beating up a chomo, gets carried away, he loses his life, and then you're on the same plan as everybody else. And I just saw that life going nowhere so fast, so fast. And I'm not a violent guy at heart. Like, I'll protect myself, I'll protect my family, I'll protect my girl, I'll protect the things that I love at all costs. But I'm not somebody who looks for violence or wants to get caught up hurting people. Like, you know, I separated myself from a crew of dudes that I loved that were my homies because they were violent. And I just wasn't on that same tip. And I had to make that decision like mid 2000s to separate myself from that. And since every single one of those dudes has been charged with either a murder or a manslaughter, every single one is doing life. Another one is doing life. A bunch of them did like 9 years, 8 years, 7 years because they jumped some dude and he died. It's the exact. So I made that smart decision. I'm just, to anybody who's watching, like, you see those kind of things in prison, and every time you see something like that, another piece of you just disappears. You know, a part of the light inside you just goes away, and you become more and more acclimated to seeing things like that. And if you get acclimated to seeing it, then it's going to be a lot easier to be involved in it because you become cold to it. And there's been a few situations in my life where I've beaten and been involved in jumping guys that was wrong because I was young and I was just hard-headed and I was easily influenced by the people around me. And that's how you get caught up. You think it's loyalty, you think it's friendship, but it's not. There are real friendships, but what you do make real friendships in prison. But what I try to tell everybody, even on my channel, is a real friend isn't going to lead you into violence. A real friend isn't going to lead you into using dope. If you're on the straight and narrow, a real friend isn't going to be like, bro, come do some heroin with me or call you to get some blow from. That's not a friend. And until you realize that, you're going to be caught in the hamster wheel system because your priorities will be all twisted. And for a long time, my priorities were twisted. Like, I believed that the people in prison were more like me. I related to them more, and that's why I belong there, and that's why I was comfortable there. But as soon as you start seeing the darkness at a deep level, You become more involved in things, and you're not just skating by, because you might go through 2 years and skate by. You're just smoking, chilling. You don't see any real violence. You don't get caught up in anything like that. But then you could be in a situation where you're caught in a stretch where you see a ton. You could be on a violent range where people are getting carried out on stretchers. I lived on 3A in Joyceville, and it was a violent range, man. People got hurt on the regular on that range, and big Lebanese dude, probably 240 pounds, but short-ish, probably 5'8", 5'9", just a bodybuilder dude. And somebody had thought that he had stolen some cartons of cigarettes because he had the same name as somebody else who had a nickname. So communication just got mixed up. Somebody said, Carlos had a carton and a half of smokes, but that wasn't the truth, right? Like, it was a mix-up. And what ended up happening was everybody just assumed this guy was a box thief. So when somebody's considered a box thief in the system here, you get cooked. It doesn't matter if you steal a can of Pepsi. It doesn't matter if you steal somebody's jail-issued peanut butter off the table. You're going to get smashed if you steal. There's a real hardcore convict attitude in the higher security prisons in Canada here. Don't touch nobody's things. Don't box thief. Stay away from the feds, like all the traditional hardcore convict stuff, right? And man, I just feel like when this guy got it, I was supposed to be involved, and I was supposed to be part of the jumping, because we didn't want box thieves on the range. But when you see his reaction, the way he's acting, saying, nah, I didn't take it, I knew immediately he didn't take nothing. This guy's prepared to fight 7, 8, 9 guys. He didn't take it. And because of the way that the communication happened really quickly, and you know how prison can work sometimes, pride gets in the way, there's no real communication, just people yelling and screaming at each other. Bang, it popped off. This guy got jumped halfway up the range. When he was halfway down the range, when he's laid out like this, knocked out on his face, down on the concrete, and this guy just kneeled over him and just started smoking him in the back of the head with his face on the concrete. And then this guy comes out of the block, comes out of his cell with a big ice pick and just starts hitting him through his back. Wham, 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 and you're hearing it ting, ting, hitting the floor, man. Like he's going clear through this dude. This dude was such a savage. There was just a thin pick. So, you know, it punctured both of his lungs, but he's lucky it didn't hit a heart or anything like that. But this dude was such a savage. He stood up after. His face looked like a Klingon. Like, it was so swollen and smashed that he didn't look like a human being anymore. And you could see the bubbles coming out of the holes in him and in his back. And we're telling him, bro, you got to go to the hospital. But he's one of those old school dudes. I ain't cracking off no range. I ain't leaving. I'm fine. Like, buddy, it's not cracking off a range. Like, you're going to die, bro. It's
yeah, you got holes in you, bro.
You got to go to the hospital, buddy. Like, you're going to die. And, you know, his pride almost killed him that day. But he ended up going to a hospital. And surprisingly, they actually let him come back to the range. In 2006, at that time, the inmates had a lot more pull. The inmate committee, we have something called an inmate committee here in Canada in most penitentiaries. So we have a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. These three dudes basically are the liaisons between the population and the warden. Now, usually these dudes are high-standing members of the convict. They're not like yes men, usually. In the higher security places, they're going to be real savages, and they're going to try to get stuff done. They can never get anything done because, you know, you're fighting. You never really get anything done. I just want to say, Joyceville Penitentiary, for me, was a life-changing experience. And the addition of that and then that murder in the Don jail changed my whole life, changed the way I looked at things, changed the way I felt about my own life, how much I cared about myself. When you see people die like that, because it's not like they're dying in a bed at home with their family, like they're laid out on a toilet floor, like underneath a toilet with their head getting booted in old dirty shower water, and then dragged up in front of 40 people laughing at them and basically going along in it. That's a horrifying way to die. And I don't care what anybody says, you could be the hardest dude in the world. If someone turns on you like that, it sucks, man. There's no fun in that. I've seen gangsters run.
So out of all that, all the stuff that you're saying that went on and everything, when you got out, how did you make the change, man? Because a lot of, there's struggles when you get out and how you're going to integrate back into society. How did you do it, man? So if anybody watching, is struggling, like what were the steps?
Well, I'll say this, for me, it took a long time. Like I saw that murder situation happen. That was like 2000. It was actually the first murder of 2010 in Toronto, I think. It was like January 1st or 2nd, right? And from that day, I wanted to get out of prison and stay out of prison. I had already kind of wanted to, but that had decided it for me. But drugs, the addiction to drugs kept me tied up. And I started doing better between 2010 and 2015. I caught a pen bit, but it was a minor pen bit for one break and enter. It was like 2 years and a bit. And I got out 2014. And then I, again, wanted to change. Just a lot of stuff happened in my life, fighting with my family. Just the traumas of going through everything that I went through just kept me in my head, kept me resentful to the world. And I just had an issue with authority, had an issue with being part of society. Like I really, truly had a hard time connecting with the people in society. Like I couldn't keep a job because I'd want to fight people. You don't realize the difference. You don't realize that these are civilians. Like, doesn't matter how big, strong, tough they look, they're not the same mentality. So you can act certain ways and they just get scared. It's intimidation. They don't like it, especially if they know who you are and the life that you came from, and you just make it impossible to succeed. So what happened was I caught my last pen bit in 2015. I caught 3 years, 8 months. And that whole bit, my whole goal was to just get off drugs. And I was struggling at first I was using basically right up till about January 2016. And then I had started self-medicating with Suboxone. And I started getting Suboxone on the black market, waiting to get on Suboxone. I was on the waiting list and it just took a long time. And I finally got on Suboxone and it just changed the way that I thought. And it's not the answer for everybody. And for some people, it's the answer is to go, 1, 2, 3 months on it, wean themselves off of the hard stuff, wean themselves off of the Suboxone quickly and get off it. But for me, that wasn't happening. Like I had been a hardcore addict for 20 years, a hardcore heroin addict for 10 years, had done 3 federal sentences and over 17 years time as a result of my drug addiction. Like I wasn't the guy who was just going to be able to manage it. That wasn't me. So I decided for harm reduction, right? And I got on the Suboxone program, and immediately that drug chase mentality was gone because I didn't want to do that anymore. I was just addicted. I didn't want to chase. I didn't want to be that guy. I felt weird. People were looking at me in the system a lot different because I was on drugs, and I was a guy that was never really looked at like the junkie, right? But kind of my last bit, people were looking at me like that, right? Because I was all skinny when I first came in, and then I was on Suboxone, and I didn't like the way I felt. And people in the pen, they judge you differently when you're on drugs.
The first time you started taking Suboxone, it was in prison. Mm. Are you allowed to take it, or you're buying it on the low?
So in the Canadian prison system, you can get on methadone or Suboxone in the system from jail drug addiction, from institutional addiction.
Damn, that's crazy.
But only in the federal system, not in the provincial system. So if you're in the detention center and you're not on methadone or Suboxone when you get arrested, you're going cold turkey. You're going through it. But if you are in the federal system and you get an addiction in the system, you can apply to go on the methadone program, but you have to tell them, like, I've been using drugs and blah, 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 blah. So there's a risk to that, right?
Yeah.
Like it could affect your parole and stuff like that, but it also shows an initiative to change. And here we have a pretty liberal prison system. Like they opened a safety injection site in Drumheller in Alberta where you take your own drugs and you're allowed to use your own institutionally smuggled drugs in a safe injection site in a prison.
That is fucking nuts.
Save lives, like it's
Oh my.
a little bit more liberal here. Now, Ontario is not so liberal. Ontario is a conservative government. They're not doing that in our prisons in Ontario. It's even the federal system. I think, like at the end of the day, it is the same across the country, but they don't seem to ever want to do any of those things in Ontario. Like there was supposed to be a tattoo program because there's a bad Hep C problem. So they opened a tattoo parlor in a prison here, is in Bath, where they provided guns and like everything safe with all the equipment to clean it all.
Yeah.
And within a couple of weeks or months, they shut it down because the Ontario, they don't like that here. The guards don't want none of that here. But if you go other places in the province, it's like that. Now there is opportunity in this country. I feel a lot more probably than in the U.S. because of the amount of people that are incarcerated in the U.S. So in Canada, like I said, there's maybe 40,000 incarcerated across the whole country.
So when you got out, man, and you started taking the Suboxone, everything from that point on, you kind of just, became a better person and started getting good things, or did you struggle even through any of that with anything?
So since I've gotten out, I got parole, surprisingly, but they gave me parole simply to go to a treatment center. So in Canada, you have the way your sentence is structured. You do 2/3 and you get out. Right, your last 1/3 of your sentence, you're on parole. In the federal system, it's guaranteed 2/3, you're out. But I had 5 months till my 2/3 till I would have been released, and I got early parole at 5 months to go into a 6-month rehab program. So it actually carried me past my release date. But this rehab program changed my whole life. They challenged me for the first time. I went in there with a convict attitude, and by the time I left there, I was a different guy, man. My soul had changed. They actually challenged me. And people told me in the system, the program doesn't work. It's too hard, blah, blah, blah. But I just committed to it, man. I just did it. And I let them confront me. And I let them tell me what was wrong with me. And it's a CBT based program. So it's not about the addiction or the crime. It's about the behaviors that lead up to the irresponsibility and the traumas that lead up to those behaviors. They tackle the issue at the core. And, I went through being molested as a young guy. I lost my brother to a double murder when I was like a year after that. So I've gone through some things, and I just challenged it. And honestly, since I've been out, I've slowly improved as a man across the board. I've gotten better in my relationship with respecting my family. I've gotten a car. I've held a job now for almost 3 years. I've gotten raises every year, blah, 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 blah. I'm in a much better situation. I live on my own. I provide for myself. I don't struggle financially. And I was somebody that the federal system had deemed done. I had actually fallen into a category where they could just throw my paperwork in the garbage. They don't have to apply for anything. I was such a high-risk offender that I was on team supervision on parole with no violence on my record. And team supervision is where you have to report twice a week to your parole. They do curfew checks, urinalysis once a week. And if you are the 1 in a million that succeeds, what the funny thing is, though, I beat my parole this time. I was on an ankle monitor for the first 3 months. Then they let me off the ankle monitor. I smashed my parole. It was to the point where, I don't know, it just didn't faze me anymore. I just stopped being that dude. I cut off everybody from my life that was from my past. You have to cut off everybody. There can be no ties. As soon as you go back to your past in any way, those endorphins and stuff start kicking in, memories.
Yeah.
You just want to get back involved and just a little bit of influence, and it's easy. But now I've been away from it so long that I've built up the fortification that I know nobody can just walk up to me and say, you want to use some dope? You can hand me a bag of dope and I just dash it. It doesn't worry me anymore. But I did get the Suboxone implant. So
yeah.
So listen, so they put 4 rods. They cut a little tiny hole in my arm here, and they put 4 rods. And for 6 months, I get my Suboxone.
Crazy.
I don't have to take any pills or anything like that. So it's actually more for low dose, long-term management rather than somebody trying to get off.
Yeah.
And I look at it like it's heart medication for me, man. It's keeping me alive.
Yeah, you've changed your life. So like you said, everybody's success and how they get through their issues is, it's individual, but you got a good story, man. And I just want to, give you big props for turning your life around and not letting, a lot of people fall victim to the statistic shit. You know what I mean? With being in prison and getting out and going back. So, but I want to thank you for coming on the channel again, man. And where can the people find you on your YouTube and social media?
So you can find me at Canadian Prison Stories with the new Matt Clark. Like I said, I speak on prison, I speak on addiction, and sometimes I speak on life. I'm in the process of just upgrading all my electronics and my tech. So hopefully I'll be expanding my channel a little bit in the next month or so and just being able to do a little bit more. But like I said, that's what I speak on. And my Instagram is the new Matt Clark, all small letters, all one word. And I just want to say, it's not impossible to change. All you have to do is be prepared to make the necessary changes and sacrifices to do so. It's actually surprisingly easy when you do that. And I thought it was impossible. I thought it was impossible. My fate was prison. My fate was life on the installment plan. And that was what I was doing. And turns out it wasn't even that hard. I just had to separate myself from any negativity. If somebody isn't bringing growth or possibility to my life, see you later. Don't waste your time with the scrubs.
Yeah. So, hey, man, if you guys are tuning in for the first time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in doing an interview about your time, just hit me up on Instagram, DOCTV813. And with that, it is DOCTV813, and we're out.